That's how the entire thing began. A seemingly innocent question in a nearly deserted diner on a cold December night, one that would drag me into a mystery I wish I could forget. I was sitting there, sipping my coffee, trying to warm up before heading home when a man I'd never met slid into the booth across from me. No greeting, no introduction, just a worn, distant look in his eyes and that peculiar question. "Do you say Christmas or Xmas?" I blinked, surprised by his forwardness. Christmas, I guess? Why?" For a moment he didn't respond. He just looked down at his hands. His fingers trembled slightly as though the act of being there was taking every ounce of energy he had left. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small, battered Bible. He placed it on the table between us, his fingers lingering on its cover, before looking up at me with wild, searching eyes. "Do you believe everything in here?" I shifted in my seat, thrown off by his intensity. What's that got to do with Xmas? He let out a shaky breath, glancing around the diner as if expecting someone or something to appear out of the shadows. When he spoke again, his voice was low, barely audible. "It has everything to do with Xmas. You see, most people think Xmas is just a casual shorthand for Christmas. But there's a deeper meaning, one that ties into something far more sinister." I could feel a chill creeping up my spine as he leaned in closer. The letter "S" has long been used as a symbol for the unknown, for something hidden or even dangerous. It's no coincidence that we use X in everything from marking treasure to denoting something forbidden or cursed. In this context, Xmas strips away the idea of Christ, the very heart of Christmas, leaving behind something hollow, something dark. It's like taking the light out of the holiday and replacing it with shadows. His words hung in the air between us. The thought of it made my skin crawl. I swallowed hard, feeling a wave of unease wash over me. There was something deeply unsettling about the way he spoke, as if he knew something the rest of us didn't. Something terrible. Before I could gather my thoughts, he reached into his coat again and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of parchment. He placed it gently on the table, pushing it toward me with trembling hands. The edges were frayed and the ink had faded with age, but I could still make out the words scrawled across it in uneven handwriting. What is this?" I asked, picking up the note, my fingers brushing the rough paper. He stared at the note with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "That note," he began, his voice trembling, "was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls." I felt my stomach drop. "The Dead Sea Scrolls? You mean those ancient religious texts?" He nodded, his eyes wide and fearful. "Exactly. But the scrolls weren't just religious writings. They contained warnings. Warnings about things most people have long forgotten or never knew to begin with. That note with the words Merry Xmas was hidden among them. And it's not just an innocent greeting, it's a clue." I frowned, trying to wrap my head around what he was saying. A clue? To what? He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "To the Grail." I blinked, taken aback. The Holy Grail? What does that have to do with Christmas or this note? His expression darkened. "The Grail isn't what people think it is. It's not some divine cup that grants eternal life. It's something older, something far more dangerous. The Grail is a vessel for darkness, a gateway to something that should never have been found." His gaze drifted toward the window, where the streetlights flickered ominously. "And the X in Xmas? That's not an accident. It marks the spot where the Grail was hidden long ago. X is the marker, the symbol of something lost, something that was meant to stay buried." I sat back, my heart beginning to race. "So, this note, this Merry Xmas, is somehow tied to the Grail?" He nodded, his hands trembling as he gripped the table. "The X's isn't just a letter, it's a sign, a curse. Anyone who touches it becomes part of the mystery, part of the darkness. And the Grail? It's not about eternal life, it's about eternal damnation. Those who seek it, those who come too close to uncovering the truth, are marked. And the moment you touched that note," I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he replied, his voice hollow, "that the moment you touched that note, you became part of it. You're marked now, just like I was. The Watchers will come for you, just like they came for me." "The Watchers?" I repeated, my voice shaking. Who are they? They're the guardians of the Grail, he said, his eyes wide with fear. They've been watching over it for centuries, making sure it stays hidden, making sure no one gets too close. But now they've noticed you. My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced toward the diner's windows. Outside, under the flickering neon lights, I saw them. Tall, dark figures, their silhouettes barely visible in the night. Their eyes glowed faintly like embers in the darkness, and they were staring right at us. The man across from me stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "They're here," he said, panic lacing his voice. "You have to run!" I stood up, my hands shaking. "But what do I do? How do I stop this?" He shook his head, backing away from me slowly. "You can't stop it. Once you're marked, there's no going back." Panic surged through me as I looked toward the figures outside. They hadn't moved, but their presence was suffocating. "You're insane," I muttered, backing toward the exit. "Maybe," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "But I've seen things that would make your skin crawl. The Grail, it's not what you think it is. And the Xmas, it's a doorway. A way to strip away everything good, everything holy, and leave behind only darkness." I turned and bolted for the door, pushing it open with all my strength. The cold night air hit me like a wave, but I didn't stop running. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, those dark figures with their glowing stares. I didn't dare look back, but I knew they were there, following me. The more I thought about it, the more that note bothered me. You see, most people think Xmas is just a casual shorthand for Christmas, but there's a deeper meaning that ties into something far more sinister. The letter X has long been used as a symbol for the unknown, for something hidden or even dangerous. It's no coincidence that we use X in everything from marking treasure to denoting something forbidden or cursed. In this context, Xmas strips away the idea of Christ, the very heart of Christmas, leaving behind something hollow, something dark. It's like taking the light out of the holiday and replacing it with shadows. The thought of it made my skin crawl. I ran until I couldn't breathe, my lungs on fire and my legs screaming in agony, desperate to escape the shadows that pursued me. Finally, I collapsed by the curb, heart racing, convinced I had left the nightmare behind. Just as I began to catch my breath, my phone rang, shattering the eerie silence. With a mix of relief and dread, I answered, thinking it might be my wife checking in. But the voice on the other end sent chills spiraling down my spine. It whispered, "Please like, share, and subscribe. If this story shook you, you're not alone. There's more to uncover, more that's been hidden. Click the playlist up in the left corner to dive deeper into the shadows."